Welcome, everyone. I'm R.T. Ryback, CEO of the Minneapolis Foundation. We just want to tell you how excited we are that you're joining us for Climate Reaction. Climate Reaction is a year-long effort on behalf of the Minneapolis Foundation to really dive into this key core issue of the intersection between climate and equity. That's not a new issue. So many of us, I think, have understood that. But I want you to think back about a decade ago to a tornado hitting North Minneapolis. And I remember walking through those neighborhoods with trees down, with houses deeply damaged, and realizing how different it was because it didn't hit a neighborhood that was a neighborhood of great wealth, not even a middle-class neighborhood. There were people with significant issues of poverty and joblessness in that area, and that created enormous additional problems. What was the insurance? Did they have insurance? Did they know their landlord? Would their landlord be held accountable? What would happen with the refrigerator where you didn't have enough money to fill it back up, and on about what that really meant with the intersection of a catastrophe and poverty. And now we need to think about the context, the fact that calamities like that will be happening more and more, and we need to look nowhere further than Texas to recognize that we're in a very, very different world. And like that old saying that when America gets a cold, Black America gets pneumonia, the issue of racial inequity hits so deeply in these issues and will hit even more directly as we move forward. That's what we're going to be exploring over this next year. This isn't a new issue, again, for the Minneapolis Foundation, because it really grows out of a fund that we started 2 years ago in partnership with the City of Minneapolis and the McKnight Foundation. And in just a minute, you'll be hearing from the mayor about that and how you can participate that as well. In addition, we're going to be hearing from 4 grantees of that fund, and we're really excited about these. And part of what we want to do at the Minneapolis Foundation is hold up the emerging work going on in the community of some real, true, innovative work that's happening at a grassroots level, emerging from communities to address these core issues. We'll also, at the end, hear more about the Minneapolis Climate and Racial Equity Fund that we hold and how you can be part of that. So that'll all be part of the discussion we have today. But let's just stop for a second before we dive in and explore this issue of what is the intersection between race and climate. And when we look at that, I think it's important to look at not only the points I just made, but where are we moving in the future? How do we build resiliency into our community? How do we create intersections between that work and the other important work going on at the Minneapolis Foundation, our work in criminal justice reform, our work in education? These may all seem unrelated, so might our work with community health, and yet race and equity are really at the center of all of that work. What I'd like to do now is to turn to the mayor of Minneapolis. It's time to stop hearing from a washed-up mayor. Let's hear from a real one. The mayor, I think, is awfully important in this intersection because several years ago, his team helped launch the fund that we have at the foundation. So I'm really proud to have the mayor on this call with us. And before we hear from the grantees of the fund, let's hear from the mayor and about how we got started on this initiative in the first place. Mayor Fry.
Well, thank you so much, RT. We can't tell you how much we appreciate the work that you're doing over there at the Minneapolis Foundation and our partnership on both climate action and equity. And as you mentioned, that intersection is broad and it is so critically important right now. And hello, everyone. Warm welcome to all of you. I've been really looking forward to getting this year-long climate reaction series going. And I know this is the first event, but it's really exciting to see so many people that are taking some time out of their very busy days to launch these important conversations. And I really want to thank the Minneapolis Foundation for organizing this event and for their ongoing support of the Climate Action and Racial Equity Fund that RT just mentioned, along with the McKnight Foundation and, of course, our city. RT mentioned this briefly, but in just 2 years of operation, the fund has provided over $380,000 in grants to 11 Minnesota nonprofits. And today's event will feature 4 of those nonprofit grantees from 2019, which was the inaugural year of funding. And this conversation is especially poignant right now because nearly 100 million Americans were living under some form of really severe winter warning. And the shocking situation that I think we've all witnessed in Texas really highlighted the gigantic cost of inaction when it comes to climate change and maintaining the integrity of our public sector infrastructure. Here in Minneapolis, we know that our climate is becoming warmer and wetter. In fact, Minneapolis has been singled out as the city second most impacted by climate change in the entire country. By the way, the city that is first most impacted was New Orleans. We've got more extreme rain, these events that dramatically impact our community, requiring very costly repairs to our infrastructure. I mean, this is not about just redoing one pipe. This is not just about, taking care of one home that may have gotten hit by a tornado. This is about talking about our entire city infrastructure, all of the sewer systems that are now required to handle so much more rainfall than they normally do. It used to be that, when the snow and ice would unfreeze, it would happen over the period of a month. Now it's happening over the period of just a couple of days. And on the city side, we have implemented a 100% renewable energy standard, focused renewable energy and energy efficiency dollars towards BIPOC businesses. That's through our Rebuild Resilient program. And we've also instituted a social cost of carbon into our procurement process. By the way, this is something that every level of government, from local municipalities in Minneapolis right up to the federal government, should be doing. There is a social cost to carbon, and we need to be acknowledging it in all of our purchases. And any conversation about this topic is incomplete without acknowledging how climate change has disproportionately impacted our Black and brown residents. And an example we're focused on right now is the hotter Minnesota numbers will further exacerbate some of the inequitable exposure to airborne pollutants. And we see this year in and year out. And absolutely none of this is normal. This is not regular, and we have the power to do something about it. And as a council member, I saw firsthand how most programs that were focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions were disproportionately used by white homeowners and property owners. And so when I was elected mayor, we immediately got to work creating this climate action and racial equity action fund that's going to be intentionally focused on some of these place-based, community-driven solutions. And we want to make sure we're engaging with organizations that could get more residents involved in these programs and drive some real demonstrable reductions in GHG emissions. So, we've got some talented leaders that you'll be hearing from today that have really dedicated their work to testing new approaches and prioritizing communities that far too often are left behind. And I know many of you come to this conversation as a parent or an aunt or an uncle with young people's lives that are confronting a very uncertain future. And for me, that certainly has taken on a new meaning as my daughter, Frida, who's like 5.5 months old now. And I want to be able to look her in the eye and said that we cared, that we gave a damn, and that our generation didn't just sit back on our hands and idly watch all of this, horrible climate change play out, and that we did something that was meaningful for the generation. So the power to create meaningful, lasting change is within our grasp. I'm so excited to continue that work and the partnership with all of you. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much, RT Rybeck, for all of your work in the Minneapolis Foundation. The partnership is so deeply appreciated. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, RT.
Thanks very much, Mayor. We really appreciate your leadership on this. As the mayor was talking about this fund, I want you to think that one thing you can do, any of you can do right now, is if you want to give to that fund, and I'll mention this a couple of times over this presentation, text climate MPLS to 243725, climate MPLS 243725. So I'm going to bring on the first of our 4 people. Crystal Porter, why don't you turn your video on if you could. Could I also ask others on the call to turn theirs off so we can make sure that Crystal is seen? So if you're watching right now, make sure you're turning your video off, and we'll get Crystal up. As she's coming on, I want to tell you what's going to be happening over the next year. We will be following in March with another series like this, or another hour-long presentation. I guess we'll have 2 more grantees coming, and then also some work that's going on in the region with REAMP, which is an organization the Minneapolis Foundation funds that works on climate issues in the central states. We also then, as we move into the spring, we'll be doing a partnership with Nature Conservancy, where we look at natural climate solutions, how use of land, including agriculture, can really change the dynamic on how we address climate. And then in the summer, we're going to be doing field trips. We're pretty confident that we can do these in a socially distanced way. And one of them is going to be to a really exciting farm where we can look at regenerative land solutions in a farming setting that also works with immigrants, building equity on helping them create income on the farm itself. We also in the fall are going to have an event from our Family Philanthropic Resource Center at the Minnesota Zoo. Our website is also going to be a resource center throughout the year. You will find a good deal of information there now, but much more ongoing. That's going to include a series of videos by Sven Sundgaard, the meteorologist, who did them specifically so they'd be accessible to all family members. So if you're working with your kids at home on schooling, or if you simply want to get your family together, or if young people want to talk to their grandparents to get them to wake up on this issue, you can use those videos as a tool. So go to our website and we can help with that. Crystal, do we have you on the screen here yet? Okay, all right, so Chris, I'm gonna.
Sorry. Do you hear me?
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I am very good. It is really great to have you here. Crystal's from Minnesota Renewable Now. And we're going to ask you to spend a couple minutes talking about your great work. And what I really love about it is this is very community-based work, bringing the work home to people, quite literally. You're working in homes, you're working on renewable strategies. And as much as I think we want to immediately move to global solutions, we all have control of what can be done at a real local level like that. But people need partnership. So you're in that first group of grantees for the fund, and we're really excited about that. I wonder if you could take just a couple minutes to tell us about the work.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, again, my name is Crystal Porter. I'm the founder and executive director of MN Renewable Now. We are located in North Minneapolis. 100% of our staff and board are North Side residents that care passionately about environmental issues and climate change. One of the reasons why we named our nonprofit MN Renewable Now is because there's an urgency to move into renewable energies as soon as possible. And one of the ways that we agreed as a group how we were going to do that is by working very grassroots and making sure that the face of our organization is recognized by the people in our community. If people in North Minneapolis are able to access resources and make a decision on how to make a climate change plan, then anyone can do it, we feel. So one of the first programs that we had was the Power North program, which is where we engaged people and connected people with resources on how to opt into things like wind source or community solar gardens, get energy efficiency audits and installations. But one of the things that we noticed in North Minneapolis that we were really, we saw that was lacking was rooftop solar. And that was because a lot of the people in our community, we have a lower area median income. We have a high rentership. And we have very few people of color that own properties in North Minneapolis. And we have the most dense African-American populated neighborhood in the state of Minnesota. So we wanted to address that issue. And we noticed that was a way to build wealth, to address equity issues when it comes to renewable energy movement. And so we spoke with the Red Lake Nation and how they were able to finance a solar project on their reservation. And we said, if they can do that and pull that off there, then we can pull it off in North Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. And so we got many different investors together to invest a lump sum of money to be able to install solar panels on rooftops in North Minneapolis. So currently we have finished all of the solar assessments for the 24 rooftops. And now we're putting together the design for the solar panels to go on these 24 rooftops. And we should be able to install the solar panels on the roofs by summer. The entire team of installers are Northside residents and people of color. We even have a partnership with a roofing company that's Northside, that's all BIPOC, and we are training them to install solar on top of the roofs, as well as addressing any roofs that need to be repaired before the solar is installed on top.
Great. Crystal, that's just great work. Wow, I just love hearing that. You know, one of the things that comes up so often when we're dealing with climate equity is when you're dealing with an area that has many issues in North Minneapolis. So often that's put up against people saying, why this? Why not homelessness? Why not poverty? Why not criminal justice reform? Why not others? And so often climate winds up an important issue on a list of things, and the higher the need in the neighborhood, the more competition is. How do you deal with that issue when you're dealing with individuals?
You know, honestly, a lot of people say that North Minneapolis has bigger things to worry about than to worry about the environmental issues, because they're just simply trying to survive. They're trying to pay the bills, but that's not necessarily true. My folks, when we go around and we communicate with the people in North Minneapolis, and we talk about these issues, the answer is that they overwhelmingly care about it. They just feel powerless and feel like they don't have the opportunity to participate in the movement. And so I would say that being able to hand them the tools that they need to participate, you'd be surprised how many people are ready to jump on board and make that decision. It's really a question about resources, you know, and of course a lack of education. Once you're able to explain to them that this is an issue, they're ready to move forward. It's just now getting the resources in their hands to be able to move forward.
Great. Since you got a grant through the fund, when any of our donors of the Minneapolis Foundation, we have an account here, want to know about an organization doing like this work, we'll obviously be able to get it to them. But for those who maybe don't have a fund at the Minneapolis Foundation, what's your web address so they can find you?
So you can go to mnrenewablenow.org, and you can get our contact information there. This project is not fully funded, but we're super close. So if you're willing,
how much do you need?
Great. We're at about 600,000, so we need another $150,000.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Really great work. Keep it up. It's just really inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to invite on our next speaker, Julia Newbern. Julia is from Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. I've known some of the great work that you've done over time. Julia, are you with us?
I am with you, and
Excellent.
I'm thinking that I actually have my two colleagues, Whitney Terrell and Jada Pounds, are going to do this little presentation, and we're wondering if it's possible to share some slides.
Yeah, we're set up for that, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay, Dario will work with you on that.
The wild PowerPoint, is that the PowerPoint?
No, I did not send a PowerPoint, so I was just going to share my own screen.
Okay, got it. All right.
So if you just enable participant sharing, I'm so sorry, folks.
This is a good opportunity while we're doing that for me to give a commercial for Dario from 360 Youth Lens, who use picture you see on the screen. We use him for a lot of our videos, and he works with BIPOC youth on video presentations. So thanks, Julia. You gave me a chance to do a Dario commercial. Don't use him so much that we can't use him at the Minneapolis Foundation, but he's pretty awesome. Okay, why don't you take it away?
Beautiful. Whitney?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here with you on behalf of Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. I serve as the Environmental Justice Program Manager, and I get really, really excited about working with communities who are interested in using faith as a lens to address climate change. Jada?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jada, and I am the Energy Efficiency Coordinator and Office Manager for Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. And earlier in 2020, we decided to start a program for youth. And so we partnered with two congregations. One was Shiloh Temple, and the other was Masjid Anor, both over in North Minneapolis. And we
Sorry,
did
Jada.
this.
There you go.
Mhm.
Keep going. I just got you
Oh.
your slide.
Oh, thank you. Okay. And we interacted with the youth weekly. So we had Zoom meetings and we covered different topics ranging from trash and recycling and how that's taken care of, all the way to engaging community through social media and what that looks like. And for Shiloh, the youth learned about the lighting, and we also sold LED light bulbs to the congregants. And with Masjid An-Noor, we helped the youth learn about energy efficient boilers, and we were able to replace the one in Masjid An-Noor, while they also were able to do a community trash pickup day. And so the next slide is just kind of an example of the meeting that we did. And so each meeting we would go over things that we learned from the past meeting, and just kind of had them engage and think about what they wanted to see in their community and how they could strengthen their environmental justice attributes. And so one of the quotes that really stood out during one of the presentations was, "In every community, there is work to be done. In every nation, there are wounds to heal. In every heart, there is the power to do it." And that was from Marianne Williamson. And so we just kind of took those quotes and made sure that it was in the work that we did, in the training that we did, so that they could be stronger environmental leaders. And with that leadership, they were able to help save Shiloh $3,500 a year with the lighting retrofits. And they also saved an estimated 28,000 pounds of CO2 just by making those changes. And they saw the huge difference. And now we're helping them change lights in their daycare. And with Masjid, with the HVAC system, we were really able to reduce the costs for the carbon output and just the cost in general of operating. And they were able to use that money to help pour back into the community. And the youth were able to also host a trash pickup day. And we learned so much from all of this. COVID was a year that just threw challenges, but the youth that we worked with were just really flexible. And they were so great because they were super passionate about the work that we were doing and how they could be involved in it. And one of the cool things we did, we saw that there was a lack of accessibility to public restrooms during COVID. And so through the partnership and the work that we were doing, we were able to help Shiloh get a porta potty on their yard, and so that people who needed to use the restroom could have access to it. And we also put a list of resources inside, so if people were looking for anything, that we made that possible. So that was just some of the work that we did that over through March and the spring up until the summer of last year with some of the youth in the community.
All right, I'm going to hand it back to you, Whitney, to finish up, and I'll just turn off the slides.
Okay, great. So just to also give you more background, so the work that Jada described is really within this larger ecosystem of MNIPL. Our goal has been to both build transformative power and to literally think about the lights of each other, like our energy or what drives us to build an interfaith climate movement. And so there's part of our work focuses on leadership development programs and then action opportunities. One of the parts of our work that I work on most closely is the Just Solar Coalition, which includes a number of organizations, everything from Eighth, Fire Solar, Climate Generation, Community Power, Cooperative Energy Futures, Honor the Earth, Real Solar, Sierra Club, Minneapolis Climate Action, Minnesota Renewable Now, and Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, among kind of core partners. And so our goal has been to really increase accessibility for all people to have access to the benefits of what solar can do. And that includes promoting jobs, closing the employment gap, also making sure that those environments are really inclusive. So part of my work has been to help train workforces to focus on how can we make sure that unionized workforces who are committed to diversity, equity, inclusion are actually possible for people from all different backgrounds. And that ultimately there's some community projects. So whether you're a renter, whether you're a homeowner, whether you have good credit, bad credit, any kind of credit, that you can have access to the benefits of this sort of interfaith, really like multi-partner organization that's Just Solar Coalition. Our goal has been to build awareness, to move the market, both to think about supply and demand of what it means to have equity, to have affordable access to solar. And so when we think about some of the work around Just Solar, that literally means people at times who've been involved with the justice system. I think one of the best projects we've had in our state and among this coalition is thinking about how people who are in justice involved life circumstances could get trained and then come out. I think we still need to see, more growth, and with that means like we need more projects for solar, so that we can really make sure that if people are trained in this field, they have a long-standing and very successful career. I hope that you'll go to our website and check out a great video that summarizes the power of community solar. It brings people together in communities in really powerful way. Jada mentioned ways that just even from foundational environmental and climate justice related education, how that can be powerful for youth, but also the actual projects just bring a lot of people, resources, and job opportunities. So I think that the funding from the Minneapolis Foundation has gone a long way, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much. And when that funding comes, it comes through the Knight Foundation and the city and also donors. So, and by the way, I mentioned earlier that folks can give to that fund, but I want to make sure they support your work. Either you, Whitney, or Julia, or any of you, you work through an organizing model based on already organized communities, meaning in this case, faith communities. How does somebody bring their faith community into this work? Is there a need for more faith communities? Are they needed in certain areas of town? How do you go about doing it? Whitney, Julia?
I think there's part of it that's absolutely organic, that sort of through word of mouth, people get connected with their work. But I think in so many of our faith traditions of practice, or spiritual practice or other traditions, there's something that calls us to do more. Like it's good to worship together, but we all want to make, I think, an impact on society. And many of us have messages or like revelatory text where we're like, it requires us to do something about the environment. So that's always a really exciting part, that you get to learn about different people's traditions, while really, building either in like faith specific circles to think about these topics, while also having the option to have specific congregational programming. And did you want to say something, Julia?
No, I just coughing. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. And so, especially if I can kind of use the cough as a prompt, ways that during COVID and people really just need to have community. So it's actually so much more accessible for people all over the state. And we really especially want people from Minneapolis and the Twin Cities, as we say, the cities, to connect with greater Minnesotans. Because when we do that, what's so exciting is we see that our state needs just transition even more broadly. So people who are in communities where natural resource extraction has been the core area of industry, thinking about ways that just transition means, how do we make sure that people don't have to make a choice between the climate and what's good for the climate and what's good for their community economically. So those kind of conversations have been really rewarding in our work, and I think so beneficial for our state. And there's so much more to go, right? So if agriculture is the core of our business, I think all of us are really excited about our state's economy. I think, regenerative agriculture, as you were describing earlier, I don't know what to call you, Mayor Ryback, former Mayor Ryback. I don't know if you always, okay. To always keep that title. I kind of forget. So I think that those kind of relationships and collaborations across the state are really laying an important foundation, how Minnesotans are thinking hard, thinking together, and we're making tough decisions that may not always be popular, but that feel right, as Mayor Fry described earlier, for the next generation.
Whitney really beautifully said. You guys, thank you so much for really, really great work. That's Interfaith Power and Life, Minnesota Interfaith Power and Life. Sorry, thank you. right, so we're going to bring on the folks from Dream of Wild Health. Okay, so that's going to be Neely Snyder, who's the executive director, and Jessica Greendeer, who's the seed keeper and farm manager. Welcome to both of you, to Neely and Jessica. Can you hear us yet?
Hi there. Yeah, thank you.
It's so good to have you here. I'm a gardener, so I love hearing about your work because my wife got me very much into permaculture and understanding that the farm practices we have, be it on a big farm or be it in your backyard, are practices that have been developed not in harmony with nature, but often in opposition to. And so your work on seed keeping and understanding native traditions to me is not just about history, which is incredibly important, but it's also about resilience because the practices are resilient practices. There's no new that needs to be developed. It's understanding what was a natural rhythm. So I wonder if you could take a couple of minutes to talk about your great work.
Yeah, so thanks. It's an honor to be with you today. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Neely Snyder. I am Ojibwe from St. Croix, and I'm also a direct descendant of Red Lake Nation and Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. I'm the executive director at Dream of Wild Health. So Dream of Wild Health is a Native American-led nonprofit serving the urban Native community and beyond. Our mission is to restore health and well-being in the Native community by recovering knowledge of and access to healthy Indigenous foods, medicines, and lifeways. We have an office located on the American Indian Cultural Corridor, and we also have a farm in Hugo, Minnesota, which is just a short 35 to 40-minute drive north. So we serve our Native urban community through several programs, one of which is our Native Youth Education and Leadership Program, where we provide youth with skills needed to preserve the land and environment. We deepen their connection with culture. We increase knowledge of healthy foods and medicines. We include seed preservation and climate resilience education and develop skills needed to succeed in life. And I'll just share that last year we were really super proud to have 4 of our youth alumni come back as seasonal staff to work on the farm. So that was really exciting. We also have our Indigenous Food Network. That is a partnership of Native organizations in the community who are working collaboratively to build food sovereignty and wealth from within. And that's where we prioritize our community to eat locally and sustainably. We have community outreach and education, and I invite anyone to participate. We host several workshops with youth and community around gardening, seed saving, preservation, healthy cooking and eating, and talk about the effects of climate change and about how our Indigenous communities are the most vulnerable for that. We also have our farm and food access, which much of our produce is reserved for youth programs, our Indigenous food share, which is a CSA model, for our IFN partners, our community events, and also for wholesale. We participate. This year we'll be at 2 farmers markets in the city. So you're welcome to join us at Four Sisters Farmers Market or the Midtown. And we also wholesale to Indigenous chefs, restaurants, and organizations in the community. Last year, we were able to distribute over 8 tons of produce into the community, which is more than any other year in the past. So that was really exciting. And last but not least, our Indigenous Seed Stewardship Program. So Dream of Wild Health is home to one of the largest collections of Indigenous seeds in the region. And we have seeds pouring in from Native seed keepers, farmers, community members across the country. And so in 2019, we were able to hire Jessica Greendeer, who I'll hand it off to, as our first ever seed team. And she's been doing amazing work. So I'll hand it off to her.
Just as you're passing it off to Jessica, just wanted to remind people that if you have questions, put them in the chat. And also, if you want to tweet about this, which we would love, use the hashtag climate reaction. That's climate RE-action. Okay, so now why don't we turn it over? Thanks.
Thank you, Neely. Thank you, RT. RT, it's always good to talk to somebody else who's interested in gardening as well. So I'm grateful that you have that background and your wife is pushing you more into the permaculture ideals and sense of place too.
We'll come visit your farm if you're invited.
Oh, absolutely. You're always welcome to. Yeah, Neely really did an excellent job doing a huge snapshot of the work that we do. And that, of course, like there's so many pieces that we just can't cram into a small amount of time. There are so many different moving pieces to the organization that, it all revolves around climate in some way. For our youth and our youth education programs, it's not about that grim climate change that we feel like we're pushing it onto them. I know Mayor Fry had mentioned, looking in his daughter's face and having to know that he did the very best that he could and made the right decisions as much as he possibly could to give her a better life and a better future. So what we do focus on is really providing more creative solutions to how our youth are going to inherit the earth that we're working with. We focus a lot on climate resiliency at the farm with using regenerative agriculture practices and incorporating those. And myself, I'm working on my permaculture certification, so I hope to be able to incorporate more of that into the farm and then also through our youth. Our youth are definitely a bright light of hope for all of us. They're hungry to be able to find solutions, but also knowing that there's a part of responsibility that we all have to take amongst ourselves. And, as Native people or Indigenous people, we look at that as our responsibility to the earth. None of this work would be possible without her. I often refer to her as my coworker because I can't do anything without her help. And that's why it's so important to not only focus on the earth and also our perennial and wild plant relatives, but also our cultivated seeds. Which Neely mentioned with our Indigenous seed collection, it's a part of ensuring its continued existence. And so, as many of you know, you aren't able to go into your local garden store or landscaping center and buy Indigenous seeds because our Indigenous seeds are a priceless relative. They've nourished us since time immemorial, and it's something that we have to continue to grow and steward for our next generation. It's been such a long road. I think 2019 seems so far away. But during the 2019 growing season, we were able to rematriate some of those seeds that we were growing. And rematriation is just focused on taking some of those Indigenous seeds and giving them back to their communities of origin. And so what was so beautiful is that we were able to grow so much at the farm, but in that we also planted those seeds with other communities so they would continue to grow those seeds as well. 2020, of course, exacerbated the food system that we live in. With the pandemic, there were people who needed food, and the organization stood up and not only disseminated raised bed kits for families, but then also provided seedlings and seeds for our community members. And so it's looking and incorporating the truth that we don't need to have a farm to grow food. And I'm probably I think the whole idea is to set up our future generations to the point that we work ourselves out of a job. We want to make sure that we are creating a brighter collective future for our youth. And that's about, giving them all the skills and tools that they need to be successful, but then to also be able to take a back seat and be able to learn from them as well. Because our youth are ready. They are ready and up to the challenge, and we need to ensure that we make them better than we are today. And all of that is, in part to the funding that we've received from you all, and I'm very grateful for that. And thank you so much for your time.
Thanks. I wonder if I could ask you guys a question about the conversations you have at a local level. One of my wife and I favorite things to do in the summer is to drive somewhere in greater Minnesota and look at a great farm that's doing sustainable practices. You go past one farm after the other with artificially manufactured seeds that then require artificially manufactured pest control, and and then you get to this great place that's doing wonderful work, and on your way home you stop at the local grocery store and you can't find a fresh vegetable anywhere. And so strangely that these food deserts occur on some of the richest farmland in the world. But changing patterns and getting people moving into that is complicated work. What are the conversations like that you have with people at a local community when you're coming in and you're saying to them, I need you to rethink how you're eating? And that's a little bit of an intrusive conversation. How do you do that in a way that's effective?
This might be a little awkward, but I feel like
Awkward is good here.
It's off topic, but I think we submitted some slides and I forgot to mention that up front. Do you guys have?
Why don't we
slides?
take just a couple minutes? I want to make sure I don't lose that last speaker, but I would
Sure.
love to, just if you could touch on some of the highlights, that'd be great.
Yeah. But yeah, to answer part of your question, I mean, we have several partners in our community that we're talking to, and it was really a huge shift. Piloting our Indigenous Food Network program right directly in the community became a program because of the conversations that we were having in our community about our health inequities in the community and the importance of eating healthy and trying to bring back our traditional foods, reclaim food sovereignty, and the importance of reversing those health inequity trends. So it's been a huge movement for us in our community, but it's happening and people are jumping in and are willing to, make that change in our own community. And so at times it might be hard. So our Native community typically will come to a powwow and have fry bread. But I was part of another organization at the American Indian Cancer Foundation, and we did not serve fry bread because it's not actually a traditional food. So that was really difficult when people would come in and say, well, where's your Indian tacos? So then we tell them, and they were upset, but we talk to them and just say, hey, we're trying to reverse, the negative impact on the foods that we've been eating, and are really focusing on the healthy traditional foods that, our ancestors once had, and bringing back that health that we all know, we had. We were a very vibrant community. So just reversing that and having conversations with people and then having them take ownership of it. We've been seeing in our network, even that Dream of Wild Health, we adopted a healthy food policy, and a lot of our organizations that we've been working with are also adopting those food policies and pushing that, education, I guess, with the community. And a lot of our Native chefs that we work with are also doing the same. And so their menu is primarily healthy Indigenous foods, and that's where we come in too. Yeah. I also invite Jessica to respond to that as well.
Thank you, Neely. I feel like it's very well received, RT, because there are, yes, there are those foods that we sort of grew up with that aren't necessarily culturally appropriate, but there are foods now that are sort of gaining stride just by us increasing some of the access to those foods.
Yeah, I was in one of those fry bread Indian taco conversations, and I was observing. It's a complicated conversation. I get it. Thanks, you guys, for the work. Considering the time, I think maybe what I'd suggest with those slides is why don't we send it out to everybody who's on it, and we'll also put them on the part of our website that showcases your work. Thank you so much. Really, really great work, and we'll look forward to seeing your farm. So the fourth speaker we want to bring on is Paul Schroeder, who's the CEO of RCAR. I'm excited about this piece because when we think about climate issues, transportation obviously is at the center of so much of it. And there's this often sense that, oh, gee, Hollywood celebrities have the luxury of driving the latest, most energy efficient vehicle, but how do we bring this into community? And that's really what your work is about. Paul, are you on yet?
Yes, I am.
Excellent, good. Well, Paul, great to see you. And I wonder if you could talk to us a bit about RCAR. And I think one of the things that's so powerful about the work is RCAR has had a great history, but also has been, I think, especially and uniquely focused on the ability of getting sustainable transportation strategies into communities that most need it and have most been unable to afford often some of the more forward but also expensive options. So tell us a bit about your strategy.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So Our Car is Minnesota's original shared mobility company. We're a nonprofit company. We've been around since 2005. And in 2017, we started working on a public-private partnership with Xcel Energy and the cities of St. Paul and Minneapolis to develop an all-electric one-way car sharing service with a focus on communities that were disadvantaged in terms of transportation, including communities of color and low-wealth communities. And the thing that I really want to draw attention to here is actually the partnership and the power of the partnership. So we all have a role to play. Our Car has an important role in this project that we're developing, but also Xcel Energy, which has committed $4 million to this project and is providing renewable energy credits for it. The cities that are going to own and manage the infrastructure for the project. We're all working together on this partnership that ultimately is going to bring 150 shared electric vehicles to the Twin Cities, supported by 70 charging stations that are going to be fueled by 100% renewable energy, which will make us the first 100% renewable transportation network in the Northern Hemisphere. So it's a pretty exciting thing for us. But we also decided early on that we really needed to develop and expand these partnerships. And so with support of the Minneapolis Foundation and the Climate and Equity Fund, we developed a set of partnerships and did a community engagement project. And I want to call out our partners in particular. We worked with 10 community-based organizations in St. Paul and Minneapolis. In St. Paul, we worked with the Frogtown Neighborhood Association, the North End Neighborhood Association, Dayton's Bluff Community Council, Payne-Phelan District 5 Planning Council, and the Westside Community Organization. And then in Minneapolis, we worked with Juxtaposition Arts, Eastside Neighborhood Services, the Cedar Riverside Neighborhood Revitalization Program, Tamales y Bicicletas in Phillips, and the Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. And the goal of that was really to gather information, build relationships, better understand how this service could really support the needs of the communities that would be impacted by the service. Because so the MPCA, oh my goodness, so sorry.
I'm glad you're busy. We're excited.
Apologies for that. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency defines areas of environmental concern as places where either half of the residents are people of color, and or where 40% of the community is living at or below 185% of the federal poverty level. So of the 70 charging hubs that we're building out, 62 meet at least one of those criteria, and more than half meet both. So we did a lot of work with our community partners, and one thing I will say in the interest of time, we've developed a report, a 60-page report from our activities that we are going to be publishing probably the first week in March, so just within the next few days. This is going to go up. You can find this on our website, which is ourcar.org, HOURCAR.org. But also, if you go to stpaul.gov, stpaul.gov/EV, you can find all the information about our community outreach. We translated our surveys into 6 languages, including Oromo, Karen, Spanish, Hmong, and Somali. And there was a great article in the Sahan Journal that just came out about our outreach with the Karen community that I can post in the chat. But look for this report to be coming out soon. What I would draw attention to finally, there's a great quote that I wanted to read from the MPCA's recently released report, The Air We Breathe. It says, in Minnesota, discriminatory housing policies, the placement of freeways in Black neighborhoods, and zoning and permitting decisions led to people of color being concentrated together with pollution sources. The result is air pollution that threatens higher health risks in areas where Black, Indigenous, people of color, and low-income residents live. So what we're super excited about is that as a result of this project, which is a 7-year project, we estimate that it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, CO2 emissions, by 62,000 tons. That it will reduce criteria emissions, so things like carbon monoxide, nitrous oxides, volatile organic compounds, and particulate matter by hundreds of tons, and that it's going to save Minnesota residents over $100 million in transportation costs over 7 years, with more than 40% of that going to people living, to households that are earning $50,000 or less. So we're incredibly excited about the partnerships that we've developed. We've got some great findings that are coming out in this report. We're so appreciative for the support of the Minneapolis Foundation in this project.
Well, thanks very much. You know, one of the things that I think is so important about that is that when we're dealing with putting an equity lens on the climate issue, it's much more complicated for starters because we have an overconcentration of high polluting activities in areas like this, but because it's cumulative impact, it's all coming together. It's sometimes difficult for a program like yours to quantify what you're doing because you don't have a control group. You may control the transportation, but something else may be happening that'll move it in another direction. Is there a simple way to describe how you can, I mean, you just gave us a wonderful description of how much particulate matter you're going to solve. How do you quantify what you do in a place where there's a whole lot of point sources of pollution?
That's a great question. I mean, the best way to answer the question is to say that we look at research that's been done in the area. We look at our own internal data. One of the things about car sharing is that we collect a tremendous amount of information that we're able to then look at and say, okay, what are the vehicle miles traveled that we're reducing? What are the travel patterns? How many transfers are happening between our car, for example, and public transit? So we look at the data that we collect, we look at the numbers, we look at the national research. There's been a lot of research that's been done in this area by UC Berkeley that we certainly pay a lot of attention to, as well as research that's been done. So the University of Minnesota, Yingling Fan has led research on the so-called spatial skills mismatch, which basically just describes the fact that, especially for folks who are living in these areas of environmental justice concern, they often face really big challenges in terms of their mobility connections to work and to other meaningful opportunities in life. The transportation that's available to them, it takes a long time. They have difficulty making connections. They may be reverse commuting. They may be commuting at different hours from the sort of 9 to 5 commute stream. And so we're looking at all of these things and trying to say, in a sense, how do we shape this new service in such a way that I mean, again, going to something I think you said before, people think of electric vehicles as an opportunity often for the richest folks in society to have a really nice source of transportation and feel good about it. What we're saying is that we think that these vehicles, as much as possible, that we want to make them available and the infrastructure to support also people to adopt those vehicles available to everyone. So the last thing I'll say, the one thing I forgot to mention, is that the charging infrastructure that's going to support the car share network will also be a public charging network, so that if folks want to purchase an electric vehicle and don't have access to home charging, maybe they're renters living in multifamily complexes, they'll be able to use this infrastructure to charge their own electric vehicles.
Well, thank you so much. Great work. I really, really appreciate your efforts. So you've just heard 4 really, in my mind, just absolutely wonderful community-based organizations working on this intersection of climate and equity. We have just a couple minutes left, but what I want to do is bring in my partner at the foundation, Paul Odegaard. Paul's really been the project manager on this from the start, and when folks from McKnight and the city of Minneapolis came into the Minneapolis Foundation to talk about this fund. And by the way, while I appreciate people thanking the Minneapolis Foundation, this is a partnership with McKnight, the city, and us and the community. But when they came in, Paul just leapt at the opportunity to be a partner on it from the beginning to the end. And I'd like, Paul, if you could give give folks just some background on the fund and how they can participate in that. Paul, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Yeah, the fund came as a partnership, really stemming out of the fact that years ago there was a young whippersnapper mayor named R.T. Ryback who helped launch a Minneapolis Climate Action Plan for the city. And so as that plan was launched, some of the constituents that worked with RT on it were realizing that there could be more impact and more visibility to some of the climate actions that are happening in Minneapolis. So Peter Ebnett from the city of Minneapolis and the mayor's office reached out in partnership with Brendan Slaughterback of the McKnight Foundation, and they gathered with us to kind of brainstorm the way that we could actually get hyper local in this work. And what resulted from that was initial leading contribution from the McKnight Foundation to enable us to really launch this work. And then we pooled some funds and we raised some money from our donor advisors. And for those that are on the line, I just want to thank all of our donor advisors that have participated. I want to thank all those that are interested in attending today. I want to thank our community members that are also attending, and our professional advisors, some of those folks, and any nonprofit partners that are out there. You know, we've had so many wonderful interactions, outreach. We've seen, you know, we've been able to fund 11 organizations in 2 years, as the mayor noted, and about $250,000 of grants this year, 132,500 last year. And, you know, we've seen, you know, there are over 30 applications we couldn't fund from unbelievable nonprofits doing great work. And there's just only so many resources right now. So one of the things I'm here to do is to ask you all, if you're interested in supporting this work, to please do it. We always, when we're working with our donor advisors, we encourage them to get to know organizations directly and get connected. But if you're dipping your toe in the water here, you just want to get more familiarized with the nature of this work, we welcome your partnership as a donor and a supporter. And we're very happy to share all of our resources. You're very welcome to reach out to me. One more thing, I know we're getting close to time, but I'll just very quickly thank all the folks that have been in partnership out of the committee level, beyond the nonprofit partners, Aaron Jerbeck-Hewlin, our program coordinator, Brendan Slaughterback from McKnight, as mentioned, Peter Ebnett, Kim Haveney from the City of Minneapolis' Sustainability Division, Robin Garwood from Cam Gordon's office as the councilperson, Sean Pierce, Ebony Adedayo, and then we had 6 community partners help us review this year. So Ashley O'Neill Prado, Kosar Mohammed, Julianne Learsman, Sharon Elamine, C. Terrence Anderson, and Vanessa Wills were community partners that helped us evaluate 2020 applications this year. And so we're really doing this as a community model, and we're trying to build community strength through this work. And we're so grateful to call all of you partners. And please do reach out to me directly if you have questions or concerns. We're looking forward to the year ahead.
Great, thanks a ton, Paul. I want you to also know that you can contribute to just by texting to give. Text climate MPLS to 243725. One of the things that I think is so exciting about today as we kick off this year of learning about the intersection of climate and equity at the Minneapolis Foundation is Climate Reaction is really about us as a community foundation helping the community come together on strategies. So as we mentioned, next month we're going to come back. You're going to hear from a couple more really good organizations and hear a little bit, compare that to what's happening in other communities. I mentioned earlier also that we're in a partnership with the Nature Conservancy to talk about natural climate solutions involving natural uses of the land and farming and restoration of native landscapes. We'll be taking field trip, maybe plural, in the summer for that. We have this Family Philanthropic Resource Center event at the zoo coming up in the spring. And what I also really encourage you to do is spend time on our website. That area will be growing over the next short period of time, where we're going to have more and more resources. So if you know of something, come back and tell us about it. We may post it there. Paul's job is to work with the 1,400 different funds we have at the Minneapolis Foundation. So unlike a typical foundation where we would decide where all the money goes, we're working with about 1,800 people who have about 1,400 funds. So our job is to work one-on-one with people and put these ideas in front of them. We also want the expertise we've developed and the expertise you've developed to come back and help us educate both the folks we work with and out in the community. So just share information with us, and you'll get a questionnaire about how effective this was. Give really high marks to the moderator, and then be honest about everything else, so that we can make sure that we can make these even better. And we'll just certainly appreciate for this to first event of Climate Reaction. We hope to see you again.